The first time Chitara smiled at him, David cried. He thought I didn't notice. I did, but peace never lasts for long. About 2 months later, my landlord knocked on my door. They're visitors. Outside, 3 black luxury SUVs were parked along the dusty street. Children gathered around them in amazement. Neighbors peeked through their windows. Margaret Adeyemi stepped out, elegant as always, untouched by the heat, untouched by guilt. She looked around the neighborhood with visible disgust. I'd like to speak privately. I folded my arms. You can speak here. She glanced toward David, who had arrived only moments earlier. I wasn't speaking to you. David stepped beside me. You'll speak to both of us. She sighed. I suppose this is inevitable. Her assistant handed her a leather folder. She opened it. I've established a trust fund. She slid several documents toward me. A house in Ikoyi, a monthly allowance, private schools, healthcare, everything your son will ever need. I looked at the papers, then back at her. What's the condition? She smiled. Intelligent girl. I waited. The child becomes an Adeyemi. He'll be raised by his father's family. And me? She answered without emotion. You'll receive generous compensation. For a moment, I genuinely thought I had misunderstood. You want to buy my child? I want to secure his future. My future is with my son. She looked irritated. You cannot give him the life we can. I smiled. Maybe not. But I can give him something your money can't. She frowned. What? A mother who'll never trade him for comfort. Silence. Then she tried another approach. You'll regret this. I shook my head. I've regretted many things. Choosing my son has never been one of them. Her face hardened. You don't understand the world you're entering. No, I understand it perfectly. I met at your gala, and it was uglier than poverty. David couldn't stay silent anymore. Mother, enough. She turned toward him. You're throwing away generations of family reputation. He looked directly into her eyes. No, you already did that. When you treated the woman I love like she wasn't human. Without another word, Margaret closed a folder. You'll both regret this. She climbed back into her vehicle. The convoy drove away, leaving behind nothing but dust. That evening, David sat quietly on the front step outside my apartment. I've resigned. I blinked. Resigned from what? My mother's board. What? I stepped down as CEO. I stared at him. You built that company. I can build another. My peace is worth more. I shook my head. You shouldn't throw away your future because of me. He smiled faintly. I'm not. I'm protecting my family. For the first time, I believed him. A week later, Nigeria woke up to shocking headlines. Adeyemi Group CEO resigns. Boardroom power struggle exposed. Billionaire family in crisis. Television stations replayed leaked footage from the gala. Someone had secretly recorded everything. Margaret humiliating me. The guests laughing. David confronting his mother. Within 48 hours, the internet had chosen its side. Not hers. Sponsors withdrew. Business partners demanded answers. Women across Africa shared the video with one message. No woman deserves this. Former employees began speaking out. Stories of intimidation, control, manipulation. Old scandals resurfaced. The empire Margaret had spent decades protecting was beginning to crack. David looked at the news on my small television, then quietly switched it off. I don't want revenge anymore. I looked at him. What do you want? He glanced toward Chitara, sleeping peacefully in his crib. A family. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I watched our son breathe. Children don't care about bank accounts, or social status, or pride. They only know who shows up. David had started showing up every single day. But whether that would be enough, I still didn't know. Then, 3 days later, a journalist knocked on my door with a sealed envelope. There are financial records inside, she said. Someone inside the Adeyemi Group risked everything to get them to you. I opened the envelope. The first page carried Margaret Adeyemi's signature. The second page revealed secret transfers. The third contained evidence that she had illegally diverted company funds for years, using shell companies and forged approvals. And on the very last page was a handwritten note. She destroyed your life. Don't let her destroy anyone else's. I looked up at David. He was already reading the same documents. His face turned pale. This, he whispered, is bigger than either of us. I stared at the documents for what felt like an eternity. Page after page. Company transfers. Fake contractor payments. Shell companies. Forged approvals. Millions of dollars disappearing over several years. At the bottom of nearly every document, one signature appeared. Margaret Adeyemi. David slowly lowered the file. I suspected she controlled too much. But I never imagined this. Neither had I. The woman who had spent her life preaching about protecting the family name had been quietly destroying it. The following morning, David's phone never stopped ringing. Board members, lawyers, government investigators, international investors. Everyone wanted answers. By noon, Nigeria's major television stations were broadcasting only one story. The Adeyemi empire under investigation. The same people who once competed for Margaret's attention now avoided her calls. Power has a strange habit. It disappears faster than it arrives. 3 days later, David asked me a question. Will you come with me? Where? The emergency board meeting. I looked at him. What would I be doing there? He smiled gently, standing beside me. I hesitated. I don't belong in those rooms. He shook his head. That's exactly what my mother wanted you to believe. The Adeyemi headquarters overlooked Victoria Island. Glass walls, marble floors, private elevators. The kind of building I once believed people like me would only ever clean. As David and I entered together, every conversation stopped. Executives looked up. Some recognized me immediately. I recognized several faces too. They had been at the gala. Some had laughed. Now, they couldn't even meet my eyes. Funny how quickly respect appears when arrogance disappears. Inside the boardroom, Margaret was already seated, perfectly dressed, perfect posture. But something had changed. For the first time, she looked tired. The chairman cleared his throat. Mrs. Adeyemi, you've been given the opportunity to explain these financial records. She remained calm. I've done nothing illegal. One of the auditors slid a thick report across the table. Unfortunately, the evidence disagrees. Another director spoke. 23 shell companies, false invoices, personal acquisitions hidden as corporate expenses. The room grew heavier with every sentence. Margaret finally looked toward David. You brought outsiders into this family. David answered quietly. No, you treated your own family like outsiders. She glanced toward me. If she had never appeared. I interrupted her. No, if you had simply accepted that your son loved someone from a different background, none of this would have happened. Silence. The chairman stood. Margaret Adeyemi, effective immediately, your position on this board is terminated. No applause. No dramatic music. Just silence. Because real consequences rarely arrive with celebration. They arrive with finality. Within weeks, criminal investigations officially began. Several executives who had helped hide the fraud accepted plea agreements. Assets were frozen. Luxury properties were seized. News stations camped outside the Adeyemi mansion every day. The empire Margaret had spent decades controlling was no longer hers. I didn't celebrate, because revenge had stopped being my goal a long time ago. Peace had become far more valuable. 6 months passed. Life became wonderfully ordinary. David started a new company, not another giant corporation, a smaller investment firm built on transparency. He refused to hire anyone based on family connections. Every employee earned their place. He often joked, I've already learned what happens when pride runs a business. As for me, I finally fulfilled the dream I had carried since arriving in Lagos. I opened my own hospitality academy, not inside Victoria Island, not in Lekki, but in Surulere, affordable, practical, built for young men and women who simply needed someone to believe in them. Every scholarship carried my mother's name. Every graduating class heard my father's favorite words. Your name is worth more than money. One afternoon, a young waitress stayed behind after class. She looked nervous. I almost quit my job yesterday. I smiled. Why? They said people like me don't belong in luxury hotels. I laughed softly. I've heard that before. She looked surprised. You have? I nodded. Let me tell you a secret. The room doesn't decide your worth. You do. She smiled through tears. And in that moment, I realized something. Pain loses its power when it becomes someone else's hope. Not long after, David proposed again. This time, there were no yachts, no photographers, no expensive restaurant. Just the three of us sitting in a quiet park while Chittera chased pigeons across the grass. David reached into his pocket, pulled out a small velvet box, then closed it again. I don't want you to marry me because I can afford a ring. He looked directly into my eyes. I want you to marry me because I've finally become the man you deserved the first time. I smiled. You know, you've changed. He nodded. So have you. I laughed. Good. Because the old me would have answered too quickly. He laughed with me. So, is that a yes? I looked toward our son. He had fallen while running. Before either of us could move, he picked himself up, brushed the dirt from his knees, and started laughing again. Children recover quickly. Adults take longer. I looked back at David. We're still healing. I know, but healing doesn't mean we stop living. I reached for his hand. Then yes, let's keep healing together. A year later, our wedding wasn't held in a palace or a luxury hotel. It took place in the same community where I had once rented that tiny leaking room. The neighbors who had watched me struggle filled the front rows. Former co-workers came wearing their best clothes. Students from my academy volunteered as ushers. No guest cared who arrived in the most expensive car. What mattered was love. During the reception, David raised his glass. I once believed success meant owning the tallest building. He looked at me. I was wrong. He picked up Chittera. Success is coming home to the people who would still love you if you lost everything tomorrow. The room erupted into applause. Sometimes, people ask whether I ever forgave Margaret. The answer surprises them. Yes, I forgave her. Not because she apologized. She never truly did. Not because she deserved it. Forgiveness isn't a reward. I forgave her because I refused to carry the weight of someone else's bitterness for the rest of my life. But forgiveness didn't erase consequences. Justice still took its course. And that is the difference many people never understand. You can release hatred without releasing accountability. When I think back to that night at the gala, I no longer remember the laughter, or the humiliation, or the expensive dresses. I remember something else. I remember holding my son for the very first time, because that was the moment my real story began. They thought I was just a pregnant waitress. They believed wealth determined worth. They believed power could rewrite destiny. They were wrong, because titles fade. Money changes hands. Empires rise and fall. But integrity, love, and the courage to stand back up after life knocks you down. Those are the things that build a legacy no one can ever take away. And in the end, the greatest revenge wasn't watching an empire collapse. It was building a life so full of purpose that I no longer needed revenge at all.